Okay, we are back. Thank you so much for joining me again and sharing your time and energy with me. Today, we're diving into one of my favorite topics, something that I believe is the number one obstacle that's holding people back from the growth, from the impact, from the fulfillment that they're seeking. It's certainly held me back for so long. It's still comes up every single day. I'm not immune to it. No one's immune to it. And yeah, I mean, of course, I'm talking about fear. And in particular, I'm going to be touching on what I believe to be the 7 major fears as it relates to building and growing an impact-driven business, an endeavor, a project, an initiative, a venture designed to make the world a better place. And I think fear is, something so fascinating, because there seems to be a lot of negative connotations associated with fear. However, I truly believe it can be our greatest resource when transformed into something more productive and something more creative and inspiring, like love. So let's dive in. I just want to dive in with a really special quote that I think captures the essence of fear well by Franklin D. Roosevelt, is president of the United States, and he said that the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. And I couldn't agree more with that, because at the end of the day, fear is just a feeling. It's just an emotion that we get, just like sadness, grief, loss, excitement, enthusiasm, contentment, anger. It's just another emotion that we get, and it's actually a signal and a message designed to encourage us to move forward, I truly believe. And I'm going to show you why that is the case shortly. And before I dive into these 7 fears, which again are common to every single one of us, I guarantee you'll be able to relate to at least one or more, or all of them, as I work my way through them. But I want to just ground this conversation in my own personal experience, because I think it's important to touch on, firstly, where does fear come from? How does it manifest in our lives in the present day? And for me, I grew up hearing messages and statements uttered around me like, you're not good enough, by parents, or maybe by peers. Be seen and not heard. Money doesn't grow on trees. And, don't be silly. You can't do that. Are just some examples. Something that I think, all of us, were exposed to growing up, especially in those, sacred and impressionable years, 0 to 7 years of age, when our conscious mind isn't fully developed. We don't have the reason or the ability to reason or to reject ideas around us. So we have to just simply accept them as being true about ourselves, about the world. And, although they were meant with good intentions, from people who were trying to protect me, the reality is that they turned into limiting beliefs, and, they shaped my sense of self-worth throughout school, and for a very long time, for, effectively the 25 plus years of my life, only up until recently, I've just felt dominated and ruled by a very low sense of self-worth. And it's also created these fears of criticism, of rejection, of failure, because, I was terrified of what might happen if things didn't go well as a result of, these programs that were embedded in me by parents and, family and loved ones and those around me growing up. And as a result, I just internalized the idea that my voice doesn't matter, that I wasn't capable of success or having big dreams, and that, stepping outside of expectations or, the conventional path that many go through would lead to judgment, would lead to failure, right? And, this conditioning kept me from taking risks, from chasing opportunities and embracing them, both personally and professionally for for so long. And, as I entered the workforce, these fears only intensified, like whether it was feeling afraid of speaking up in meetings, and afraid of being criticized for my opinions and for my perspectives. It meant that I, was afraid of putting myself out there if I had an idea or for a project or a venture or something that, I wanted to express. So as a result, I played small. I just shrunk down and avoided situations where I might be left exposed to the potential for failure. I guess it wasn't really until I began to look inward, and if you know my story, then I went on a very long path of self-discovery and just doing a lot of inner work, I suppose, after experiencing a number of setbacks and traumas in my life, like almost losing my father to suicide, falling into a vicious cycle of substance abuse, getting sent to court, losing my license, losing my job. And these were real wake-up calls for me to, confront the fears and doubts and insecurities that I had been holding onto for so long. And I realized and I saw these fears for what they were. They were simply beliefs that I'd adopted from people who raised me and who didn't know any better, whose hearts were in the right place, and there's no judgment or criticism of them whatsoever. They were doing the best that they could with the tools that they had. But what a fantastic revelation to come to, because it made me realize that, hey, these are not truths about who I am or what I'm capable of, right? They're just programs. And over time, I started to shift my mindset. I started to realize that, hey, criticism or judgment isn't actually something to fear. It's an opportunity to improve. More often than not, as well, it's likely that it's a reflection of the person dishing out the criticism as opposed to myself. And, that rejection, that failure didn't define my worth, that it actually was a real stepping stone to greater success. And as I got into a practice and a process, and I adopted techniques and tools to let go of these limiting beliefs and fears, which, we can absolutely get into in far greater detail over the videos that come moving forward. I guess I started to step into more of my authentic self. I started to take more calculated risks. I embraced my potential. I put myself out there. And it led to me building an impact-driven business in the mental health space. We grew it to over 100 people in about 2.5 years. We won, a variety of awards for innovation and impact at a national level, and had the privilege and the the deep sense of fulfillment of being able to support thousands of people across Australia and even India. And that's what's possible. That's an example, I suppose, of what's possible when you start to change your relationship with fear. So notice the title of this video. It's how to use fear, right? And this, my mission for you, this video is to help encourage you to see fear as a source of fuel, as something to work with and transform into something even greater and more powerful as well. And before I go through these 7 fears, I also just want to take you through the science behind fear, right? Fear is wired into us for a very important reason. It's a survival mechanism, and it's designed to keep us safe from physical danger or harm. But in today's world, the threats that we're facing are really life or death. But as a result of our programming and conditioning, and certainly hardwired into our brains and DNA from our ancestors, our brains now interpret things like failure and rejection and criticism as dangers to our survival. Like, we might die if someone rejects us, right? And so when fear kicks in, the amygdala, again, I'm going to try and keep this at a pretty high level. We won't get too technical. The amygdala, which is responsible for, it's a part of the brain responsible for the fight, flight, freeze response. It takes over. It kicks in and it starts to rule your thinking and behavior. As a result, your heart races, your palms get sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, and your thoughts start to spiral into just the worst case scenario. So, what traditionally might be a relatively harmless and negative thought, starts to get life breathed into it as a result of the amygdala kicking over, and it just turns into this Netflix mini-series of doom and gloom. I think we've all been there. And, it can be a vicious cycle going on in our heads. For many, it's a cycle that people live with every day. I know I was for such a long time as well. And this isn't anything bad or good. This is just like the brain's way of trying to protect you, right? And look, whilst this was particularly crucial and vital to our survival when, our ancestors faced lions and saber-toothed tigers out on the savannah, it's not particularly helpful when, you don't get enough likes on your Instagram post, or, your product launch flops when you put it out there, right? But the good news is that, you're not at the mercy of your fear, that it's actually, what we know from neuroscience is that we can actually rewire our brains through conscious effort, through, constant spaced repetition and practice and various rituals, which allows us and enables us to transform fear into a stepping stone. And what I really, I encourage you to stay open-minded to is that we can turn and transform and alchemize fear into love. I'm going to go real deep into this in future videos, but just at a high level, to give you an example, would be something like fear of criticism, right? Often comes from a fear of being perceived or judged by others, which in essence comes back to not placing enough value and emphasis on your own opinion of yourself, so much so that you're outsourcing this power and authority and validation to others as opposed to cultivating it within yourself. So it's a call for greater levels of self-love and self-acceptance and self-worth. So that's just an example, because the truth is when we're in fear, like I said before, we're in fight, flight, freeze. Our body, just switches on like our life is at stake. And, our heart rate goes up, our stress hormone, cortisol goes up, adrenaline starts pumping through the body. But the downside of it is it shuts down any form of creativity, or peace or inspiration. Like you don't feel particularly inspired and calm and relaxed, and open to new ideas when your body and your mind are just trying to, keep you from dying, right? Conversely, when you're able to work with fear, transform it into something more productive like love, and love for yourself and love for the world, you switch on your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the body's rest and reset and digest response, which, neurologically and neurophysiologically, it starts to decrease your heart rate, decrease your stress hormone. It boosts your immune system. It boosts feel-good hormones like oxytocin and endorphins, and you start to feel at peace. You start to feel calm, inspired. That is a very powerful state to be operating from, to be taking action from, to be creating and growing a venture or a business or a project designed to make the world a better place. Because you're not thinking about, will I survive this? You're thinking about, how can I contribute? How can I best serve and support others? Right. So that's just a high level of the science. And again, I'm just going to try and really pump through these 7 major fears that are the biggest roadblock and obstacle to holding people back from the growth and the impact that they desire. But I'm going to create individual videos about each one, going deeper and deeper into it. So this is, again, I'm just trying to keep these videos a bit shorter, so it's a bit easier for watching time. So yeah, with that said, let's dive in. Fear of failure is the first one. Fear of failure, I think, is something that, again, all of us can relate to. For me, like I said, I was so afraid of taking a risk and, putting myself out there and building this business designed to help others and provide emotional support, because I thought that it would, flop and it wouldn't work out. And, it held me back from taking action. And even just, going public with what I was building for over a year. For over a year, it delayed my action. And think about what you can do in a year, right? Instead of putting myself out there and creating some opportunity for myself, I was just stuck ruminating and worried about, just everything not working out. And so what really helped me overcome that was starting to change my relationship with failure and fear, and acknowledge that failure doesn't even really exist, because I can recall all of the instances in my life when I've quote unquote failed, and they turned out to be some of my greatest lessons. Quick case in point, like I mentioned before, I was stuck and caught in a vicious cycle of substance abuse. I got pulled over, I got sent to court, I lost my license, I lost my job. I felt like a complete and utter failure, right? And now, with the beauty of hindsight, I can look back and see how that actually was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it taught me to be more self-aware, right, of when I was engaging in unproductive habits. It taught me to, value and appreciate the importance of mental health. It inspired, the success that I had later on in a very big way. And learning to see failure as a lesson, no matter how yucky and ugly and, embarrassing or humiliating it was, I was able to overcome it. And I use that same fuel, I guess, if you like, and that self-love and self-acceptance, and acknowledging that failure isn't something that's going to kill me. It's just a redirection. It's just pointing me in a different direction to make moves in that way, and be able to learn from it and grow from it. And you can, I encourage you to just reflect on, the failures in your life and look at them for what they are, because I can guarantee you, I can't do it for you, but you can do it for yourself. You absolutely can find at least one lesson, at least one, piece of good that came out of that situation that, led to even greater and better things for you. And that's the thing about life. It's always working for us, even though we might not be able to see it straight away. But we often forget, when we go through those things and we learn something and then we experience another failure, we're like, oh shit, the world's crumbling down. But you made it, you're here, and you learned something and you grew. And so that was a really powerful transformation of that fear of failure for me. Let's push on. So the next one is fear of criticism. Fear of criticism just like absolutely debilitated me. I was so afraid of what other people might think of me, going public with my personal story of battling with mental health, feeling very vulnerable online and worried about what people might say or think, and if I might be treated differently. Again, that was a major contributing factor to me just being so viscerally afraid of taking action and putting myself out there for over a year. And to use what I said before, right? Fear of criticism, I realized, is me placing greater value and emphasis on the opinions of others versus the opinion that I have of myself, right? And so, through some inner work and self-discovery and using some of the tools and technologies that I've applied in my own personal growth journey, I was able to get to a place where I was like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Right? And I don't want you to give a fuck either, right? Because this is such a major obstacle that's holding people back from really creating something special for themselves and their families and their community and the world. Right? And so as soon as I started to value my opinion of myself over the opinions of others, fear of criticism melted away. Right? Again, coming back to that self-love. and realizing that, I'm valuable and I matter and my voice matters. And how I think about myself is far, far more important than what others think about me. What they think about me is their business, not mine. Thirdly, the fear of not being good enough, right? Sort of overlaps with self-doubt. Do I have what it takes? Am I really good enough to make this thing work? I'm seeing other people around me, at pitch competitions as I'm pitching this, business idea, who are 30, 40, 50, 60 years of age with a wealth of experience behind them in business and social impact. And, so many degrees coming off the end of their business cards. And I'm just here, young 23-year-old bloke that really struggled with his mental health. What do I have to show for myself is what I thought at the time, right? And I was crippled by it. I just didn't think I was good enough. What is good enough? What is good enough? Try and explain what good enough is. Just have a go. Like, what would you say good enough really means? Would you say that being really famous means that you're good enough? Or having a lot of money in the bank means you're good enough? Or being, in a relationship makes you good enough? What is good enough? Right? This is like a really toxic perception that I think society has of themselves, that everyone has, again, and there's no judgment here because I've struggled with this too, right? But the truth is, it doesn't make sense. Like when you look at a newborn baby, are they good enough? Like, would you say to a newborn baby, you're not good enough? At what point when they grow up do they become not good enough? Right. So again, this is just a really unproductive program that was installed in our subconscious minds by people who didn't really know any better, and it doesn't hold up. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And in fact, I having this knowledge under my belt, but also coupling it with the fact that, hey, feeling like I'm not quote unquote good enough is actually a good thing. Like this imposter syndrome or whatever you want to call it is actually a really great thing, because I'm putting myself in situations where I feel like I have so much to learn and so much to grow from. Being surrounded by, these very distinguished and experienced people, I was like, wow, what a great opportunity to learn from these people, to learn more about, what they're doing well and what's working for them. And realizing that I am inherently good enough because I'm here and you're here. You absolutely are good enough. There's no possible explanation that has any logic to suggest that you're not good enough at anything, right? It's a call for learning and for growth. It means that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. It meant that I was, feeling uncomfortable, and I was kind and compassionate to myself enough to remind myself that, this is how I get better. This is how I get better. It's having that self-compassion, which again comes back to, the love piece that we're transforming fear into. So that's 3 fears down. We got 4 more fears to go. And the next one, particularly within the context of business and growing, a venture or a project or initiative of your own, is fear of charging money, or fear of charging a lot of money for your product or service, right? And yeah, this is tied to self-worth, right? Like, the amount with which we're compensated for the work that we do is actually a byproduct of the sense of self-worth that we have, built and ingrained in our subconscious minds. And like I mentioned before, self-worth is something that I struggled with for so long. Constantly being told that I'm not good enough, or that, that it's silly to have big dreams and put yourself out there. So I didn't think much of myself, and also compounded by those, traumatic events that I went through, made me feel like wasn't good enough, and also why would someone care? Why would someone pay for something that I'm building, right? And I had to look at myself and realize, like, how much do I respect myself? Because especially if you're building something designed to make the world a better place, there is this insidious fear that steps in that's like, what you're building is helping people. So why should you make them pay for it? Right? And it certainly was the case for me, where I was like, we'll just make it free and we'll figure it out. But the truth is, like, if you're building a personal brand or, a social impact business or environmental impact business, and, you're really ambitious to create something of value for the world, you absolutely deserve to be compensated for it. There needs to be an exchange of energy there as a result of the value that you're creating for the world. And it is completely tied to self-respect. When I respected myself enough and I appreciated how valuable I was and how much of a difference that I was making in people's lives and in their organizations and in their communities, I felt confident enough to start charging for what I was creating. I felt confident enough to increase my prices as well, as I develop this sense of self-respect, and I appreciate it and acknowledge the value that I'm creating for the world. Again, I can't do this for you. You have to do this for yourself. But it's so important to remind yourself that, you are creating something that's of true value, designed to help others, designed to help the environment, designed to make a difference. And that means that you absolutely deserve and are entitled to, getting compensated for it. That's inherently is absolutely necessary in order for you to grow, in order for you to expand, in order for you to impact more people. And, that was a really important thing that I consistently reminded myself of saying, yes, like, this is absolutely necessary. This is going to help me make an even greater impact. This is going to help me, pay team members and help them, put food on the table for themselves and for their families. This is going to help us, reach more people. And it started with cultivating that sense of self-respect. Okay, so we got 2 more fears. The next one is fear of growth. Fear of growth. This is like closely tied to, I guess, a fear of change, because, it's tempting for us to get accustomed to what we're doing. For many of us, we can become very familiar and comfortable with the routines and, the ways of working. And, we don't want to change it because it requires effort to change. It requires effort to grow. And I was so afraid of growth because I was afraid of what it might mean for, my capacity, for my responsibilities, for the challenges that would come with, raising capital and hiring people, and, having, more things to do. And that is, again, it's a crippling fear that it isn't serving us. In fact, it's a really great sign. It's a great sign that you are, that I am and that I was and that you are on the brink of even greater expression and expansion. We have to see that for what it is, right? We have to acknowledge that for ourselves, that this is actually a sign that, I'm ready to level up. And as soon as I started to acknowledge that for myself, that, hey, I trust myself. I trust myself with the challenges that will come. I trust myself with the responsibilities that will come. I trust myself to make this work and to, go through the process of change and go through the process of hiring people and stepping into different rooms with which made me feel more intimidated and more afraid. I know that this is actually serving me, and we have to see that for what it is. And so again, that in many ways just comes to that sense of self-trust. Again, linked to self-love. The last fear is fear of success. What will people think of me? Who am I to stand out? And particularly in Australia, and I'm sure across the entire world, but there is this, tall poppy syndrome that is really ingrained and embedded in the DNA of our society, so much so that it holds people back from, sharing their accomplishments, from succeeding, and talking about it and posting about it. And like for many of us, and certainly for me, I was just afraid of standing out and sharing my success with the world, because it made me feel like, oh, I'm bragging. People will think that I'm arrogant. I'll just keep quiet. But the truth is, right, success is so beautiful, obviously, not only because you're succeeding and you're getting great results and you're growing, but also it acts as a vessel for you to inspire more people, to show others what's truly possible, and to learn from it and to allow yourself to expand, right? So this is really a calling for greater levels of self acceptance. With every phase that you go through, success and the way in which you talk about it and share about it, and perhaps acknowledging that, hey, like, as I stand out more, I'm going to attract different people into my life. Old relationships might fall away. My identity is going through a transformation. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It can actually be a really tough time. It's been really tough for me. It's been really tough, to go through this transformation and quote unquote succeed in what I was doing, and to win these awards and to help so many people. And talking about it and sharing about it and highlighting these achievements online, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't afraid of that, and afraid of how I might be treated differently, and afraid of people thinking that I'm bragging. But it's not about that whatsoever. It's about being truthful about what you're doing, and allowing yourself to showcase your achievements, to celebrate yourself, right? And to allow others to celebrate you, because you absolutely deserve to be celebrated, at every step of the way. But this, fear of success creeps in. And, because of this tall poppy syndrome, we're afraid of allowing ourselves to celebrate. And so it's a call to allow yourself to receive more love and admiration and praise from those around you. And a call to not let this success stop you from inspiring so many people, right? Like, it's such a privilege and such an honor to be able to, to do these things, and then to have conversations with people I know, people whom I don't know, and who are coming up to me and saying, like, this is amazing, this has really inspired me, I really connect to what you're doing, I really relate to and resonate with your story, it's inspired me to do this, to build this. Like, that's so beautiful. It sends ripple effects of change through the community and through the world. It's such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing. So, it really was a call for me to allow myself, to accept myself, and to allow myself to celebrate and to receive, that love and praise from others, because I was so bad at receiving for such a long time. Recovering people pleaser over here. To all my people pleasers out there, I hear you and I see you, and I'm sending lots of love to you. Allow yourself to receive. This is it. This is a two-way exchange in life. And that's it. Those are the 7 fears, the 7 major fears: fear of failure, fear of criticism, fear of not being good enough, fear of charging money or a lot of money for your product or service, fear of growth, and fear of success. So, yeah, let me know which one you resonated with, which one you can really relate to, which one, might be coming up for you right now. I'm right there on the path with you. Like I said, just because I'm talking about these things and, I've worked on changing my relationship with these fears doesn't mean that they don't still appear, because they absolutely do. So I'm right there with you. I know what you're going through, and you're doing amazingly. Keep being kind to yourself. Keep loving yourself. Keep acknowledging, the potential that these fears can unlock for you, because they're just signs that you're on the brink of something really extraordinary. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Please, drop me a comment and share what resonated with you. Send this to someone who might be feeling really crippled by fear, and subscribe. I'm really working towards putting out a video every day, and just getting into this conversation with you, so we can just continue creating amazing things together. So yeah, lots of love. Have a beautiful day or night ahead, and I'll see you soon.